Everyone, welcome back. Today, we're jumping right into this explainer by looking at the human body through a slightly different lens. We're going to treat it like a machine, a ridiculously complex, magnificent machine. We're diving headfirst into the world of bioengineering. And we're not just observing biology here. We're talking about how we actively mimic, manipulate, and mechanically support nature's absolute genius designs.
Okay, so here's our quick roadmap for today. We're going to cover bioinspiration, zoom into DNA origami, take a look at the breath machine, check out our filtration system, and wrap up with biological scaffolding. Let's get into it. First up, Section 1, Nature's Blueprint, also known as bioinspiration. Long before humans ever sketched out an engineering schematic, nature had already spent, millions of years solving some of the most insanely complex spatial and physical problems you can imagine. Just look at animals like dolphins or bats. They use sound waves and echoes, echolocation, to brilliantly decode complex patterns in their environment. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it from a mechanical standpoint, because vision and hearing, they're actually super similar. They both rely on interpreting reflected waves of energy. So the auditory system processes these sound waves as they shoot out, bounce off surfaces, and bounce right back, giving these animals this perfectly precise, invisible map of their surroundings. And here's where it gets really cool. We took that exact biological concept and translated it into our own technology. Scientists studied this animal echolocation and built synthetic sonar and radar for, underwater and atmospheric navigation. But we didn't stop there, right? We turned that tech inward by using sound frequencies way above what we can actually hear, past 20 kilohertz, sometimes pushing up to 10 megahertz and beyond. We invented medical ultrasonography. So now we can safely map the inside of the human body, exactly like a dolphin maps the ocean floor. How amazing is that? All right, moving on to Section 2. Let's zoom way in for nanoconstruction, DNA origami. So zooming all the way down to the sub-microscopic level, we're no longer just inspired by nature's designs, we are literally folding its raw code. DNA isn't just a set of genetic instructions anymore. In bioengineering, it's actually become a highly predictable, incredibly precise construction material. Because those complementary base pairs always bind to each other in very specific ways, we can actually design base sequences to create structural scaffolds right at the nanoscale. It's like building with molecular Legos. Now, to actually build these structures, and this was a method pioneered over at Caltech, engineers follow this really precise thermal process. First, they grab a massive single strand of viral DNA. Then, a computer calculates the exact placement of smaller, quote-unquote, stable strands. Next, they mix, heat, and cool the DNA. As that temperature drops, those smaller staples bind to specific regions and literally pinch and pull that massive long strand into predefined 2- or 3-dimensional shapes. We're talking cubes, smiley faces, complex grids, the whole shebang. And the wildest part? By hooking the DNA up to fluorescent materials, or by using atomic force microscopy, we can literally see these engineered nanomachines with our own eyes. So why does this matter to us? Well, these custom shapes hold absolutely massive potential for things like molecular machines, bioimaging, and incredibly targeted drug delivery systems working right inside ourselves. It's a total game changer. Let's scale back up for Section 3, the breath machine. Okay, pulling back out to the macro level, we really need to start looking at our vital organs as highly specialized mechanical systems, starting with our respiratory bellows. Just look at how the diaphragm and ribs work together as this perfectly synchronized pump system. When you take a breath in, that diaphragm pulls down, creating a vacuum. That vacuum sucks air through your mouth, down your trachea, which is reinforced with these strong cartilage rings, and right into the branching bronchioles of your lungs. Honestly, it is just a beautifully elegant pneumatic system. But, when this mechanical system starts showing signs of failure, we need solid diagnostic tools. That's where bioengineers come in with the spirometer, which diagnoses exactly how much of that airflow is obstructed. To give you an idea of the specs, a medical-grade spirometer has to be able to accumulate volume for at least 15 seconds and measure a capacity of over 8 liters. It gives us the precise, hard data we need to diagnose chronic inflammatory conditions like COPD, for instance. And an obstruction down at the very end of those bronchioles is incredibly dangerous. Why? Because it interrupts this delicate, critical exchange process. Down at the alveolar sacs, oxygen from the air and carbon dioxide from your blood are supposed to just effortlessly swap places, right across the walls of these tiny capillaries. It's this continuous, life-sustaining chemical trade, and it has to flow perfectly.
So, when the lungs just can't manage this gas exchange on their own anymore, bioengineers step in to build mechanical bridges. We actually have a whole spectrum of ventilators. They range from non-invasive face masks that just help push air in, to manual resuscitator bags for emergency airflow control, going all the way up to tracheostomy ventilators that route air directly through the windpipe. But the absolute ultimate intervention? That's the mechanical ventilator. This machine literally takes over the entire breathing process. It steps in as an artificial lung, pumping oxygen in and transporting that carbon dioxide out when our biological bellows have just completely failed. It's engineering saving lives, plain and simple. All right, shifting gears, let's look at Section 4, the body's filtration system.
Moving away from gas exchange, let's explore how our body handles liquid filtration and chemical balancing. And I've got to say, this number might absolutely floor you. Your two kidneys, which are basically just the size of your fists, filter a staggering 150 quarts of blood every single day. 150 quarts. But from all that massive volume, they extract just 1 to 2 quarts of urine, all while perfectly balancing your body's water, salts, and minerals like sodium and calcium. It's crazy efficient.
Okay, so let's dive into the tiny structure that actually makes all of this possible. You have about 1 million of these microscopic filtering units. They're called nephrons, packed inside each kidney. And they are working tirelessly to maintain your internal equilibrium using this brilliant two-step process. Check out the specialized division of labor here within the nephron. First, the glomerulus acts like a super strict physical sieve. It lets small waste molecules and water pass right through, but it traps the larger essential elements, like proteins and blood cells, so they stay safely in your bloodstream. Then the tubule acts as this highly selective pump, grabbing the exact substances your body still needs, returning them to the blood, and pushing the final waste out as urine. Now, when chronic kidney disease destroys these nephrons, the body's toxic wastes start to build up. And here again, bioengineering provides a crucial mechanical override: dialysis. We can do hemodialysis, which routes the patient's blood to an external biomachine to be cleaned and returned, or we use peritoneal dialysis. That one is ingenious. It actually pumps fluid into the abdominal cavity, using the body's own internal lining as a synthetic filter. And that brings us to our final act, Section 5, biological scaffolding, aka our skeletal muscles. Finally, let's look at the mechanical pulley system that gives our biological machine its mobility, its force, and its structure: skeletal muscles. Literally every voluntary movement you make relies on this nested architecture. Muscles come in different types, like parallel or pennate, which dictate how much force they can produce. But at its core, it's a chain reaction. Your nervous system fires a signal. That signal tells tiny filaments inside the myofibril to contract. That contraction cascades upward, bunching up the muscle fiber, which pulls on the tendon, which then pulls the bone to actually create movement. It's biomechanics in pure action. But what happens when diseases, like muscular dystrophy for instance, degrade this beautiful scaffolding? Well, bioengineers are now actively casting myogenic cells inside dynamic hydrogels. By anchoring these gels to create targeted, uniaxial passive stress, engineers actually prompt the cells to align and fuse into myotubes. What does that mean? We are literally growing entirely new, functional, 3D muscle tissues right in the lab, achieving twitch and force amplitudes that are actually comparable to native muscle. No way, right? Which leaves us with a truly fascinating thought to wrap up our explainer today. As we keep mastering the engineering of, well, everything, from nanoscale DNA origami structures to artificial breathing organs, synthetic kidney filtration, and literally lab-grown muscles, are we fast approaching an era where the human body is no longer just a fixed biological entity, but the ultimate, entirely customizable, entirely upgradable machine? Think about that. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.